Hey guys, Mr. Larson here. Listen, I just wanted to go over some notes that we're not going to cover in class. It's stuff that most of us probably know, but just kind of a quick refresher. This should be a pretty quick video. So I want to talk about polynomials in standard form. Standard form has a bunch of useful aspects to it that we'll learn about once we start graphing and looking at different characteristics of what graphs will look like for polynomial functions. So real quick, in standard form, we want to arrange it so that our highest exponents come first. And then it's decreasing from there, right? Decreasing, or descending, we'll say. Okay, so what we're going to look at is a couple polynomials in the left column here. We're going to rearrange it to standard form in the second column, and then we'll talk about what's the degree and what's the leading coefficient, both of which come into play when we're graphing. So for the second one, 7x minus x to the fourth, we want the highest exponent first. Be careful you keep the signs the same so that 4x, or x to the fourth, is negative. My degree is the highest exponent, so highest exponent. It's also called the power. Okay, so this would be a degree 4, or a fourth degree polynomial. The leading coefficient is the coefficient for your leading term, your first term, once it's in standard form. So for your variable with the highest exponent, what's your coefficient? This would be -1. Next one. This is a degree 2 and leading coefficient 4. Okay, next one. 13 is just 13 in standard form. This is a degree 0, right? Because it would be 13x to the 0. And leading coefficient, so I think it would depend on who you ask. You could either say there is no leading coefficient because technically I would need a variable to have a coefficient, or you might call it 13 if you think of it as 13x to the 0. So I would just double check, if you're not in my class and you're watching this, just double check what your teacher would say on that. Okay. So let's look at a couple different ways to name or classify polynomials. Polynomials, poly means many, nomial is like the number of terms that we have. So when we're classifying by number of terms here, if I have one term, like 13 up here, was a monomial, mono meaning one, okay? If I have two terms, it's a binomial. 3 is a trinomial. And then there are some specific names for if you have 4 or above. If you want to do the research and come up with them, that's fine. But in general, we just call those polynomials. So all of these are technically polynomials, but monomial, binomial, trinomial are more specific. So when we ask you to classify it, those are what we're looking for. If you told us something with 2 terms is a polynomial, we would mark that wrong because we know it as a binomial. Okay, so much like we can classify by the number of terms that we see, we can classify by the degree, which is the highest exponent. Okay, it's easiest to see the degree when you're in standard form, but you don't have to be in standard form to identify the degree, and we'll talk about ways that you can find the degree from factored form in the next set of notes. But if you're degree 2, that's a quadratic. Let me back up. If you're a degree 1, or x to the first, that's linear. Think about what the graph looks like. And if there is no variable, we call that a constant. Okay. Third degree, that's cubic. Fourth degree is quartic. Think about quarters, right? And splitting into 4 parts. Degree 4 is quartic. 5 is quintic. And then 6 and above, again, there's different specific names for these, but we would just call like 6th degree or 10th degree. So I'll say nth degree. So if you're a degree 2, you could call that second degree, but we would expect you to say quadratic. Okay, just so we're all talking about the same language here. All right, last thing that we're going to talk about, you're going to potentially have different polynomials that you're adding or subtracting together. I'm not going to go over that. I think you guys have seen enough of that. Just be really careful with subtraction that you're distributing that negative sign into the entire polynomial that follows it. But one specific thing for multiplying that is one of the most common mistakes in pre-calculus that you guys should know by now that I'm going to cover is when you have a binomial that's squared. So for example, x plus 3 quantity squared. I would imagine that a third of us at some point or another during this chapter are going to claim that this equals x squared plus 9. Okay, that is not true. Okay, not true at all. What we need to do is write x plus 3 times itself, and then we're going to distribute both terms from the first binomial to both terms in the second. Right, so x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9, and that gives me x squared plus 6x plus 9. So if you want to do that squaring the first, squaring the second, that's only going to get you the first and third term. You're going to be missing this middle term. So if you're in the business of shortcuts, which are dangerous at times, you can do a shortcut by squaring the first term, squaring the second term, and then multiplying these two together and doubling it. That's the term that often gets forgot about. Okay, so let's do a different one. Okay, let's try the shortcut and then we'll verify it. Square the first term, so 2y squared. I have to square both those, so that would be 4y squared. Square the second term, so 4 squared is 16. And then let's multiply these two together. 4 times 2y is 8y, and double it. So that's a 16y. Okay, that's what we're claiming it equals. Let's actually check it. Okay, so I'll do this in a different color. So 2y plus 4 times itself. You can see I have the 2y times itself, so that's where I get the 2y quantity squared. Then I have 2y times 4. Then I have 4 times 2y. Then I have 4 times 4. So you can see that multiplying these two terms together and then doubling it is how I'm getting that middle term. So hopefully that makes sense once you see it. So that shortcut works. Okay, that's it, guys. You'll have homework on quizzes dealing with this that you'll get a little bit of practice with. Make sure you memorize this chart here. Okay, that's the only way to be successful in this stuff. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.